Hello, everyone, and welcome to She Emerge podcast. Today, I wanted to just share a brief synopsis of what depression is. Okay, so let's dive into it. Again, I'm Sophia, and I'm so grateful that you are here today to share in this space along with me on your healing journey. So let's get into it. So, depression is a common human experience, right? And so, most people, I want to say, in some time of their life, experience depression. So, one of the things that I wanted to highlight as well is that you may also notice depression, clinical depression, when someone loses interest in things that they once enjoyed, right? So a lack of interest in things that you once enjoyed, activities, right? And so here is the notion that it's the ability to follow through on activities in terms of what we call major depression, when someone is not able to function in that space, then so it disrupts your daily routine. So we have severe depression, which lasts longer than the norm. And so, again, as I said, what you once enjoyed, you found it to be satisfying, it's now becoming tedious. And this is the space in which you may experience hopelessness. And so that feeling of overwhelmingness in terms of, you know, perhaps your appetite changes, right? You also experience a disturbance in sleeping patterns. And I want you to be able to notice that, yes, there are many causes of depression. So, one could be environmental factor, which means that something in your environment, let's look at stress. Perhaps it changes the way that you see life in itself, or there are changes in the family. There are other losses that are part of this contributing factor. And I want to also pinpoint that there are also biological factors. Yes, absolutely. So there is something that we call neurotransmitters, right, in the brain. And this is where messages are sent between the nerve cells in the brain. So there is a communication that's happening. And when there is a communication happening, we tend to notice the imbalance in the brain as a result of the distorted messages or even behavior, and as well as emotions. So when we think about the thoughts that we, receive as a result of the nerves, right? There's a communication that is happening. There's a signal that is being sent from the nervous system that communicates how we feel, right? So all of those thoughts are a part of what disrupts this notion of someone who's experiencing depression. So again, I wanted to point out that there are also genetic factors when it comes to depression, in terms of family history. So you can go back multi-generational, and so there's also this notion of you are predisposed to some of these genetic factors. Uh, Again, depression may be a part of your family system, right? And so you're predisposed. So, based on research, there are approximately 25% of people who experience depression, just because there are also family members who have ongoing experiences with depression. So, even from a therapeutic point of view, I want to say that when some of my clients access services for depression, they're able to process, the symptoms, they're able to process some of the triggers that they are navigating, some of the sources of depression. And so, outside of that, they may also participate in psychiatric services. And so, as a clinician, that's outside of my scope of practice. So, they will participate in talk therapy as well as, there's intervention for them going to a psychiatrist. So then, what are some of the norms in terms of symptoms when it comes to depression? Some individuals may experience highs and lows in terms of feeling low, a sense of sadness, irritability. They may experience tension, fatigue, a sense of heaviness, so to speak, fear, a lot of the times, you know, crying, all of that. And so there's a sense of very often low self esteem. That is also one of the symptoms, helplessness, anxiety, like I said, difficulty in sleeping, all of that. And so you may be wondering, so then what are some of the ways that an individual can manage depression? So, depression, according to what I have seen and how I was trained to look at this through the lens of managing depression, depression requires a sense of someone gaining control over depression, right? And so, because everyone's experience is unique, there is no one size that fits every individual who are navigating depression. And so, like I said, seeking out therapeutic interventions, managing depression requires an insight. It requires someone being able to, to say to themselves, okay, I need to take responsibility in terms of, their own wellness plan and how that looks different for everyone. And so when you're thinking about that, it goes back to what I said earlier. Sometimes, it's all about being able to incorporate self care in your daily routine as well. How are you structuring yourself to be able to recognize that, hey, I'm not, in a space where I once enjoyed certain things, and so now you have to look at how are you able to establish, utilizing a space where you're able to process. And as I've always said, healing is not linear. There's no time frame on healing. So healing is a process, and a loss may look different, for everyone. And so it's recognizing, hey, I am not myself. This is not, the way that I once navigated the stressors of life. And grief is also a result of, depression. So the underpinning of grief contributes to someone, navigating depression. And so just establishing a daily routine activity, that's one thing, I could say how you're able to pinpoint what's wrong and then being able to work through that. So what about support system? Support system, I cannot overemphasize how important a support system is when someone is navigating depression, because every behavior makes sense in context, right? And so having secure, I want to also pinpoint having a secure support system, not someone, who says to you, oh, get over that last year, it's been a year. It's quite some time now since you're navigating this loss, so it's time for you to get over that. No, I'm not talking about those platitudes, right? I'm speaking of a secure support system, someone who will actually come alongside you and walk with you, someone who's empathetic, someone who is non-judgmental, someone who sees where you are and, have the capacity as well to come alongside you during this journey. So developing and utilizing those resources will, be helpful to interrupt isolation, because when someone is depressed, isolation is so easy for that individual to fall into that space of wanting to be alone, feeling that they're alone in this situation. And so it's very important for you to be able to reach out to a friend. And if you don't have the bandwidth, if you feel like you don't have the capacity to reach out to a friend or a loved one, someone that you trust, someone who cares for you, right? Then, I would say that's a huge area in terms of, having those individuals around you, in your process of navigating depression. So, positive attitude is going to be helpful as well. And so, it's also where you're recognizing where you are in that depression season, right? And being able to recognize some of the things that, you know, puts you down, some of the things that doesn't really lift your spirit, right? And so if you are a believer, if you are a woman of faith, I would say that, beginning to recognize some of those spiritual disciplines, some of those things that brings you joy, because two things can be true. You can still navigate depression and experience, ways that you once enjoyed, things that gave you the opportunity to lift your spirit, right? Praise and worship, for instance, right? All of those things. What does your playlist looks like? And so those things are a reminder that, hey, today I choose to show up for myself. Today, I choose to, notice when I'm having positive thoughts or thoughts that are not helpful for me. And then you're able to navigate through those difficult times. So, again, awareness, is a part of this process. Learning how to manage your depression will be crucial for you, I would say, to be able to journal. That's a huge part. I've had, uh, many clients communicate that journaling is a tremendous help in those difficult times. And so you're able to identify some of the triggers that are potentially patterns, perhaps, that puts you in a space of sadness, irritability, frustration, hopelessness, and all of those different symptoms that I mentioned earlier. So, what about exercise? When it comes to depression, especially seasonal depression, in other words, we would say, get out into the sunlight. The sunlight is so useful during these times. And so I want to say, yes, exercise, walking, jogging, right? If you're able to do that, I would say it's helpful because it improves your sleeping pattern. It improves your sense of well being and wellness. Also, it decreases stress and energizes you, right? So, absolutely, I would encourage you to, do as much of that. And it may not be for an hour, right? So simply 15, 20 minutes, walking, you would realize that, or I would say consider that to be helpful when you're navigating depression. So, what about your nutrition? Eating a well balanced diet, your meal is important, right? And so, if you are unsure, I would say about what that diet consists of, by all means plug into those resources, consult with your nutritionist, consult with your physician, of course, to see what best works for you. Because as I said before, very often depression will disrupt your meal prep time, what that looks like for you in terms of what you're eating. And so to be able to look at this notion of, if you have lost weight or you've gained weight or what is going on in terms of medical, then I would say it's time for you to check in with your medical provider. And so being able to notice, like I said, your thoughts, they will come and go, your feelings will come and go, but it's a part of what your body does. So let's normalize that. It's a part of what your body does in terms of your nervous system sending, the signals, to communicate to you what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're embodying at that time. And it's not just in your mind, but physiologically, right? You will notice somatically what your body is going through at that time. Sometimes your body may be tense, right? You may feel, stomach pains, or, there's so many different things. So notice what your body is trying to communicate to you. You may feel lethargic, you may feel tired, right? And so then it is so easy at that time just to give into sleep, right? And you may be wondering, why am I sleeping so frequently? Why am I, feeling overly tired? So I would say notice what your body is communicating to you, and just pause and to be able to recognize when you're not feeling like your usual self. So then how are you able to utilize the support system in those times? As I've said before, uh, you know to be able to talk about your feelings, right? When you are in a healing space, it's going to be very important for you to feel safe, right? And this is where your therapist comes into the picture, to be able to process all of these feelings with your therapist, or your counselor. It's going to be crucial for you to do so. Uh, you know, Aloneness is something that depression will maximize on those opportunities when you're alone in isolation. So I would encourage you to do as much as possible, not to isolate yourself, when you're depressed. And I know it's easier said than done, right? So it's important for you to notice these things. Again, there are support groups that you're able to join online. There are myriads of support groups that you're able to join, those support groups, because what is the basic function of a support group? One of the basic function of a support group is to notice that you're not alone. There are so many other people who are experiencing some of the same symptoms that you are noticing. They're going through plethora of experiences with depression, and so they come together. So perhaps your therapist can also, along with your therapeutic interventions, You can also access some of these support groups on Facebook. There are so many support groups that you can access where other individuals who are walking through this time of depression, they're also processing. So by all means, and I know there are stigmas that are associated with mental health issues as well. So I get it. So I want to normalize that as well. But, let's normalize what you're going through. And I empathize with you today. And I want to say, spend time with the people that you love, the things that once, brought you joy, that you will be able to access those spaces again. you know, for some people, they have found it helpful when they have pets, right? And so, again, this is one of the areas that they're able to access spaces for their support system to walk alongside them, activities perhaps that you would like to, enter again and to participate in, that's going to be helpful for you. So, one of the things that I would say is when you are walking through a journey of depression, I cannot overemphasize it that, in my therapeutic space, I would encourage, clients to plan, make a list perhaps of some of the plans that you have done, perhaps in the past that you missed doing, some of the plans that you are more than likely um, interested in doing again. So, future plans, past plans that you have found to be helpful. And this, essentially helps you to work through or to manage those depressive episodes, right? Make sure that you know you're able to follow through on these different activities or plans. But I want to also pinpoint that your self-care during these times will be so, so helpful, right? Take time out for you, right? Again, self-care looks different for everyone, and self-care is so much more than doing a mani and a pedicure, right? And so it's loving you again, practicing gentleness, you know. So I would say yes, uh, just getting into a space where you're able to access your self care plan and following through with those things are going to be so helpful for you. So, yes, guys, that's it for today. I just wanted to hop on real quick, and I hope something that I've said in terms of, just sharing, because everyone's journey is different. And what works for you may not work for someone else, but I'm hoping that something that I have shared, as a part of your healing journey, that you will be able to, apply something, whether it's journaling, whether it's accessing a secure support system, calling a friend, right? Doing something you enjoy, taking that walk, you know, all of those things will be necessary to help you better manage depressive symptoms. And yes, um, just because you experience sadness, on some days, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're clinically depressed, because guess what? Clinical depression looks different, because clinical depression, it interrupts again your your daily routine, right? And so this is how you're feeling in terms of, how you're navigating the stressors of life. You're able to notice the emotions that comes up for you. And I want you to be able to also notice that if you have been experiencing depression for at least 2 weeks, then yes, my recommendation for you to consider that something is off, and perhaps this is time for you to talk to a professional, right? And so, with that said, I also want you to be cognizant that your healing, again, can look different. And so just check in with yourself to see where you are in your own healing journey and to recognize your own capacity, what you have the bandwidth for. This is also a time where you have to be able to create boundaries, right? And to know what you're able to take on, and what your triggers are, what the patterns are. And again, notice, who you have around you makes a difference, right? During those times. So take care of you. And that's going to be very, very helpful for you as you walk through your season of depression, right? And I would say that as you notice, resilience is possible, right? And it may take longer for some people to become more aware of the things that bring them joy. But I want you so much to be able to check in with yourself on a daily basis to see where you are and how you're doing, because your wellness matters, right? And as you emerge from, depression, things will look different for you. And so that healing will, be necessary to notice it takes place from the inside out, right? And your journey is unique. So, again, have a good rest of your day. Have a fabulous weekend, guys. And I hope something that have been shared, you are able to resonate with it. And until the next, podcast, I want you to be able to, practice your own wellness. And it's okay to not be okay, right? To normalize that. It's okay not to be okay. And once you're able to recognize that something is off and you're able to check in with yourself, access the care that you need, then I would say that your wellness journey will look different as well. So take care, guys. Be well until the next podcast.